and yet when you were at the scene, you decided to leave the scene without safeguarding that crime scene of the shooting incident.
Kodwa ke nase nithatha ke isinqumo sokuthi nihambe ke nishiye lapho kunga safeguardiwe ke lapho.
You see now the witness is basically giving up because she's not listening to him. It's as though she has been programmed to ask these questions in a certain manner, regardless of what comes, and she's unable to adapt her questions to what she now has at her disposal. And this is actually a waste of the time of the court. You need advocates that think of their feet, that are dynamic in nature, to unearth the truth for the court. But this manner of cross-examination is not establishing anything. One is not going to change his evidence in chief. He's not going to change how the events have unfolded. We may not like how the events have unfolded at all. After all, Senzo was a goalkeeper of my favorite team in South Africa. Then even today, even though I'm no longer a soccer fan, but obviously once a Buccaneer, always a Buccaneer. Once a parade, always a parade. The point is this: we all want justice for Senzo, but we do not want fake justice for Senzo. We don't want fall guys to go to prison for when the real guys are out there. That's not what we want. And that is why we need A-grade lawyers arguing this case. I don't think that is the case right now, to be honest with you, my fellow South Africans. I don't think we have the A-team arguing there to get to the bottom. Unfortunately or unfortunately, we don't get to choose who gets to make these arguments. Let's proceed.
I would say yes.
Okay. Let's move on, my lord. With the leave of the court, may I refer the witness to the statement of Miss Sylvia Happy Ngobeni. It's part of the statement disclosed to the defense. My lord, I don't wish to read the whole content if the court allows me. But
how many pages is that statement?
It's 6 pages, my lord. Maybe I should read it first into
Yeah, I've been lenient about this, but the law is very clear.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're gonna take this witness on discrepancies, and as Mr. Mnisi says, credibility,
Yes, ma'am.
you're going to read the whole statement
Yes,
so that
ma'am.
the court can have
the full
feel.
picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Thank you, my lord.
so what do you want to do?
My lord,
This is exciting to me because this statement blows Mshololo's case completely out of the park. She's the one who's introducing it, and she obviously wanted to cherry pick. The court is insisting that she should read the whole thing and not cherry pick. And you are going to see, and I'm going to point it out to you when it's being read, where the inconsistencies of her line of questioning to the testimony given by the witness. Let's proceed.
it's
That
A1
person is
was
laughing. It's Mr. Mnisi who says credibility.
A117. I don't know if the witness can be assisted to go through as I'm reading, or he can just listen
You can read the whole statement.
the whole statement.
Yeah, because it will be quicker with you.
Thank you, my lord.
You understand English, Mr.
Yes, yes.
You don't? Okay, fine. You have to interpret for him.
Isingisi ngiyasizwa lapha.
Bonus says.
Kodwa phela
Kusekhothi lapha uyafuna ukuthi into uyizwisise kahle.
but this is court, you need to understand
Yeah, no,
something
you're right.
properly.
You'll interpret, Mr. Jonas.
Okay.
Can I have a
Alec? A copy? Yeah.
My lord,
After all, it's his right to have this interpreted to him. It's in Section 35 of the Constitution of the Republic. Section 35, subparagraph 3. So it's his right.
paragraph 2. Paragraph 2. I'm starting from paragraph 2
Yeah.
of the statement, my lord.
That's it, yeah.
I am an adult female with ID number 64, or maybe let me just leave the particulars of the witness, my lord, and start with paragraph 3. On 2014, 10/26, at approximately after 2000 hours, I was at my residence at the above mentioned address in bed, but I was not yet asleep. I say the time was after 2000 because those days I was sleeping early and I usually slept at 2000 hours.
What time is that? Bear in mind what Mshololo is saying. After 2000 hours. What time is after 2000 hours? Because 10 o'clock is after 2000 hours. 9 o'clock is after 2000 hours. 12 o'clock is after 2000. So what time is that? Why would they accept a witness that gives that type of testimony after 2000 hours? What time is that? And you see that there is no specificity there. But let us assume that the person has just, in fact, the person just said, I normally slept at 8 those days. That is how I know it was after 2000 hours. Now, we can reasonably then infer this, that it was between 8 and 8:30. Otherwise, the person would have said it was something to 9. It was before 9 o'clock. This clearly was not the case. It was after 8. You see that? We are trying to narrow it down. You see the point I'm trying to make with this. Let us proceed.
Paragraph 3.
Okay. 26 October 2014 statement lesi sika Sylvia Happy Ngubeni isikhathi ke kwakusemuva nje ko-80 ngangikwami la ngihlala khona ke kuleli kheli elichaziwe la ngaphezulu ngisembhedeni kodwa ke ngangingalele ngikusho isikhathi ngisisho ngoba ke emuva ko-80 ngoba ngalawo malanga lawo ngangijwayele ukuthi ke ngilale early.
Okay. Paragraph 4. My daughter Gugu also was in the house, but not in my room. I heard a banging noise outside, and I thought it was my daughter Gugu closing the shack house outside in our yard. She was supposed to take the key to the shack house before sleeping.
Indodakazi yami uGugu ke naye wayekhona ke endlini kodwa ke engekho ekameleni lami ngase ngizwa lo msindo ke ngaphandle ngacabanga ukuthi kwakuyiyona ke indodakazi yami uGugu evala umkhukhu wakhe ke ngaphandle egcekeni okwakumele ukuthi athathe isikhiya ahambe naso aye emkhukhwini ngaphambi kokulala.
Paragraph 5. Immediately after hearing the banging noise, I heard the whistle blowing. When the whistle blew in Mzamo section, it's when blowing it to alert the commission in the neighborhood, the community in the neighborhood, so that everyone must come out to assist. I then jumped out of my bed and went outside.
Emuva kokuthi ngezwa loyo msindo ke ngase ngizwa ke ukushaywa kwempempe noma ekwendweba uma ngabe ke kushaywa yona ke impempe eMzamo lokho usube ukwazisa ke umphakathi ukuthi wonke umuntu kufanele aphumele ngaphandle ayolekelela ngase ngijumpa ke embedeni wami ngaya ngaphandle.
In paragraph 7, my note, in the streets there were many people. Mrs. Ngashe was standing outside her gate. I saw Gladness Kumalo standing in the street outside her housing, carrying her hands over her head, screaming and crying. Mrs. Ngashe informed me that Senzo was shot in the Kumalo's house and they are taking him to the hospital.
Esitradeni ke kwakunabantu umama uNgashe wayeme egate ngaphandle egatini yakwakhe ngase ngibona uGladness Khumalo emi estradeni ngaphandle ke komuzi wakhe ebeke izandla zakhe ekhanda ememeza ekhala umama uNgashe wase engazisa noma engitshela ukuthi uSenzo wathi udutshuliwe emzini wakwaKhumalo futhi ke bayamhambisa bamsa esibhedlela.
Paragraph 8, I saw Senzo's BMW reversing out of the Khumalo's gate and drove away. I couldn't see the occupants in the car. I then proceeded to Khumalo's yard where I found my daughter Gugu. She was crying, carrying Tingo, Kelly's daughter. There were also some other neighbors I could remember, Julia Masia and Maggie Piri.
Ngase ngibona ke BMW ka Senzo iphuma ke noma ireverse ke iphuma khona egcekeni la kwaKhuma egate la kwaKhumalo yase ihamba. Angizange ngibaboneke ukuthi obani ababe ngaphakathi emotweni. Ngase ngiqhubeka ke ngiya khona egcekeni la kwaKhumalo la ngathola khona indodakazi yami uGugu owayephethe uThingo, indodakazi yakhe uKelly, babe khona nabanye ke omakhelwane. Ngikhumbula yena ke uJulia Msiya kanye noMaggie Piri.
Oh, thank you.
So please follow so far. The woman was sitting in her bed. Her child was in the house, but she was supposed to close the shack outside, right? So she had a bang. She thought it was her daughter, but then she had a whistle being blown, a whistle which in the community alerts them to all come outside because something is happening. This happened. Then she went outside. She saw the Senzo's car reversing and running past her house. She couldn't tell who the occupants were. And then she learned from Mashe's wife that Senzo had been shot in Makumalo's house and they were taking him to the hospital. All of this is happening. This is what she's describing. It's clear to anybody who has been following the trial that at this particular juncture, the police had not yet arrived. It's pretty clear. Okay, let's proceed then.
Paragraph 9, whilst in the yard of the Khumalos with other people speaking, Mr. Ngasha and her son were standing on the side of the wall in the yard. I raised a concern that the police must be summoned to the scene.
Ngisesegcekeni lapho ke la kwaKhumalo kanye nabanye futhi abantu sikhuluma umama uNgatshe kanye nendodana yakhe ke babemi eceleni kobonda egcekeni ngase ngiveza ke noma ngisho ke ukuthi akubizwe amaphoyisa.
Paragraph 10, Maggie Piri responded that Senzo didn't die. Why should we call the police? I then responded that even though he is still alive, he was shot. The police must still be notified. Kaya Ngashe called the police.
Wasephendula ke uMaggie Piri ukuthi uSenzo akashonile kungani kufanele kubizwe amaphoyisa. Ngaphendula ke ngathi noma kuukuthi ke usaphila kodwa ke amaphoyisa kodwa ke udutshuliwe ngakho ke amaphoyisa awabizwe noma awazizwe. uKhaya Ngashe wase efonela amaphoyisa.
So this woman is explaining a process, is giving a process description of what happened when she was in Makumalo's house and Makumalo was not there. So Kaya Ngashe called the police. You see that? So the police are now about to be dispatched based on Kaya calling them. But listen to the sequence of events that unfold before the police get to the scene, which Mshololo mistakenly erroneously presents them as something that happened when the police arrived at the scene and went to the hospital, leaving the scene to be contaminated. That is for, but well, let's not say it's false yet. Let's assume we haven't established it. Let's proceed.
Paragraph 11, my daughter Gugu informed me that Makumalo, Gladness Khumalo, handed to her the house keys, Senzo's cell phone, and Kelly's daughter, Tingo. Makumalo also later followed the people who went to the hospital. I don't know who took Senzo to the hospital. I assumed it was Kelly. Whilst Makumalo was crying in the street, I heard her saying the person of this head, she knows him and he usually passes by her house.
Indodakazi yami uGugu wangitshela ke ukuthi uMakhumalo Gladness Khumalo wamnikeza ikhiya zendlu, iselfone kaSenzo kanye futhi nendodakazi kaKelly uThingo uMakhumalo wase kamuva-ke naye elandela abantu labo abaya esibhedlele. Angazi ukuthi ubani owahambisa uSenzo ukuya esibhedlele. Ngicabanga-ke noma ngayicabangela ukuthi uKelly.
Paragraph 12.
Sorry, no. I'm not done yet. Yes. Ngalesikhathi uMakhumalo ayekhala ngaso estradeni ngezwa ethi-ke lo muntu noma umnikazi walesi sigqoko ngiyamazi, umuntu ovamise ukudlula la endlini yabo.
Paragraph 12.
Before she gets to paragraph 12, it's important for you now to look at the sequence of events. That the keys, the storyteller who left her own bed to come to Makhumalo's yard, even now knows where the key to Makhumalo's house is at. Please pay attention that it is not Kelly Khumalo's uncle to whom the key is at this particular juncture. Right? Why is this important? Because when the police arrived in the scene, the key was with Kelly's uncle, not with Indodagazi of this woman. So let us proceed. Bear that in mind, it's extremely significant.
I didn't see the hat she was referring to, and she was not carrying a hat in her hands. When I arrived at the Khumalo homestead, the doors were closed. I don't know who opened the doors. Myself, Maggie Piri, Julia Masia, and Gugu went into the house.
That's interesting. She told us to whom was the key given in her written story. She has not yet appeared before the court. She's given the story. She told us to whom was the key given, but she doesn't know who opened the door. Obviously, it's the one that had the key, right? Indodagazi yakhe. That goes without saying, but nevertheless, let us proceed.
Gogo leso ayekhuluma ngaso ngoba ke wayengasiphethe ezandleni zakhe. Uma ngifika ke kwaKhumalo ngathola ke ukuthi icapha ikhiyiwe. Angazi ukuthi ubani owavula, mina, uMaggie Phiri, uJulia Masia, uGugu sangena phakathi endlini.
Paragraph 13. The reason
Of the people that went inside, observe, Makhumalo's brother is not there. The uncle is not there. This is very, very important because it's what is called a system description, a process. How did the events unfold from beginning to end? And you shouldn't reverse them because you're going to pervert what has happened and find innocent people guilty. Let's proceed.
I went into the house because I wanted to see what happened in the house. When we're in the house, I saw water on the floor in the passage near the toilet door. I was amazed to see the water on the floor where I was told somebody was shot in the house.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Remember, the police are not here, they have not yet arrived. They've just been called by Kaya Ngashi. So this woman goes inside the house, right? She establishes that the scene was tampered with because she sees the water on the floor in a house where someone was, meaning this woman knew that this is a crime scene. But she can clearly see that it's being tampered with. But the police are nowhere near the scene. Can you see that? I don't know if as she's reading this, she can see it that it's debunking her story. Because the tampering with the evidence had nothing to do with the police leaving the house. By the time the police got there the first time, the evidence was tampered with. That's why there were only 2 cans. When people had so much to drink, the place was cleaned. But let me not walk before you. Let's go through this together.
Imbangela yokuthi noma ngingeneke endlini yingoba ngangifuna ukubona ukuthi kwenzekani endlini. Sathi uma sesisendlini ke ngabona amanzi ayephansi epassagini eduze kwetoilet noma umnyango wasetoilet. Ngamangala ke ukubona amanzi phansi ngoba ngatshela ukuthi kunomuntu owadutshula endlini.
I made, paragraph 14, my lord, I made a comment that why was there water on the floor whereas there was shooting. Maggie Phiri responded that it is not water, it was liquor. The people who were in the house were drinking alcohol. I saw empties of the alcohol they were drinking on the floor in the passage. I can't remember if it was cans and bottles of empties. I didn't take note of the type of the liquor was the empties.
Ngase ngiphawula ke ngathi kwakungani ke ukuthi kube namanzi phansi kodwa ke kwadutshulwa lapho wasephendula ke uMegipiri ethi ingoba abantu ababelapho phakathi endlini babephuza utshwala.
Paragraph,
Ngase ngibona ke ama-MT ke otshwala ababewophuza phansi kuyona ke ipassage angikhumbuli ke ukuthi kwakuwamakani noma ke amabhodlela yini otshwala angizange lokho ngikunake.
Paragraph 15, Megipiri started to pick up the empties from the floor. I asked her why she was tidying up before the police could arrive at the scene. Megi responded that she doesn't want the police to see that the people who were inside the house were drinking. Myself, Gugu, and Julia then went outside.
uMegipiri waseqala.
There you go. There you go. In this woman's own testimony, remember, this woman is the one that inspired the calling of the cops. The cops are still on their way. They've been called while she's there, and then you understand how things happened simultaneously. The cops are called, they are being dispatched. She goes inside the house to find out what has happened, and she observes all of these things. Megipiri decides to clean, meaning decides to deliberately tamper with the evidence. But where are the police? Nowhere in the scene. Where is the uncle to Kelly Kumalo? Nowhere on the scene. The key is only handed to Kelly Kumalo's uncle after the scene has been cleaned by Megipiri and whoever else was assisting her to remove the cans, to wipe the floor, and so on and so forth. But yet Mshololo presents this in her argument as though the police arrived there, the scene was still untampered with, and their departure going to the hospital is the reason why the scene was tampered with. That is disingenuous. I hope you guys can see this, but let's continue.
Ukuthi ke aqoqeke ama-MT phansi ngase ngimbuza ke mina ukuthi kwakungani eklina ke ngaphambi kokuthi amaphoyisa afike lapho kwiscene. uMegi waphendula ke ukuthi wayengafuni ukuthi amaphoyisa abone ukuthi abantu ababelapho phakathi endlini babephuza utshwala. Mina uGugu kanye noJulia sase siphumela ngaphandle.
Paragraph 16 is a continuation.
Baphumela ngaphandle, they went outside. They didn't stop Megipiri from cleaning the house and locking her house and taking the key to say, let's wait for the police. You see that? They allowed for the tampering of evidence to continue.
My lord, of paragraph 15, where it says, myself, Gugu, and Julia then went outside, leaving her there inside the house. She later came out of the house. It was not long after we went outside. She also left to the hospital. I don't know with whom did she go to the hospital. I thought she left with Temba because she also went to the hospital.
Kusaqhubeka ke lana ethi khona ke mina uGugu uJulia Msiya sase siphumela ke ngaphandle sashiya yena lapho phakathi kamuva ke wasephuma naye ke endlini. Akubanga kudala ke noma kubanga isikhathi ke imuva bokuthi ephume sithina ke siphumele ngaphandle naye ke wase ehamba eya esibhedlela. Angazi ukuthi wahamba nobani ke ukuya esibhedlela. Ngicabanga ukuthi wahamba ke noThemba ngoba naye waya esibhedlela.
Paragraph 17, my lord. The police arrived at the scene and they went in the house. I can't remember who opened the house for them. They came out and I always saw the police van, thank you, the police van, and I thought the police were always in the vicinity. Later, a contingency of police arrived and cordoned off the scene with tapes. They closed the gates with the tapes and instructed all the people to go out of the yard. And only the family members must remain.
So in this story that Mshololo just read, where does it say the police arrived and they left the scene and Megipiri went inside to clean the house? Where is that? Can you see that is not there? She's saying, I don't know who opened the house for them. Yeah, she always doesn't know who opened the house. but yet she knew that it was her daughter, or indodakazi yakhe, her daughter, that had the key to the house. But she is willing to exonerate her by not telling the truth, by not knowing who opened the house. Okay, but now that the people have, the cops have arrived, the house was open for them. Well, the cops have told us who opened for them. It was not her daughter, it was Kelly Kumalo's uncle. You see that? Because at that time, the key was already handed over to Kelly Kumalo's uncle. And so when they arrived there, they went inside the house, and Kelly Kumalo's uncle never pointed all the stuff this woman who wrote this testimony was pointing out that this is a crime scene. So how were the police supposed to know this is a crime scene? If this woman was there and she pointed that out and the police still left it unattended and went to the hospital, then I agree. I would agree. In fact, I don't agree. I would agree with Mshololo's line of questioning. But her line of questioning is not predicated upon that at all. It is premised on the perversion of the truth. That's how I see it.
Efika-ke khona lapho-ke futhi-ke angena phakathi endlini, angazi noma angikhumbuli ukuthi ubani owabavukela-ke endlini, base bephuma-ke futhi-ke iveni yamaphoyisa ngangiyibona isikhathi sonke. Ngicabanga ukuthi amaphoyisa ayehlezi ekhona-ke lapho. Kamuva-ke kwase kufika-ke inqwaba-ke yamaphoyisa ase evala-ke noma ebiya-ke ekhodena isini leyo ngama-tape, igate leyo base beyivala futhi negate ngama-tapes, betshela wonke umuntu futhi-ke ukuthi aphumele ngaphandle egcekeni ukuthi kusale abomndeni kuphela.
Yes, thank you. Paragraph 18, my lord, by that time, Makhumalo and other family members were back from the hospital. I don't know how did Makhumalo go to the hospital. I stood outside the yard with other people until around 2 o'clock, and I went to sleep.
Went home to sleep.
I went home to sleep. Thank you, madam.
Ngaleso sikhathi leso-ke uMakhumalo kanye nabanye-ke bomndeni babe sebebuyile-ke esibhedlele. Angazi ukuthi uMakhumalo waya kanjani noma wayefika kanjani-ke esibhedlele, ngangimi phandle-ke egcekeni kanye nabanye abantu kwaze kwashaya u-2 ngase ngiya endlini-ke ngiyolala.
This statement was signed on the 6th of July 2018 at 14:50.
Isikhathi-ke salesi statement kwakuyi-6 kaJuly 2018, isikhathi ku-10 to 3.
My lord, that's the end of the statement.
Okay.
Thank you, my lord. Can I then take the
Yes.
witness through the questions
Right.
after the long adjournment?
Oh, is that so? Okay. All right. 2 o'clock, is it?
Yes. Mr. Mthatha? Mr. Mthatha, you remember the statement which I read into the record, which was made by Miss Sylvia Hepingubeni.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's start with paragraph 13. Okay, sorry, my lord, just paragraph 8. Paragraph 8 of the statement, wherein it says, I saw Senzo BMW reversing out of the Kumalo's gate and drove away. I couldn't see the occupants. I then proceeded to Kumalo Yard, where I found my daughter, who she was carrying Tingo, Kelly's daughter. There was also some other neighbors I could remember, Julia Masia and Maggie Piri.
Lana-ke ila asho khona-ke umama Ngubeni lona ukuthi wayibona-ke BMW kaSenzo iphuma khona-ke kwaKhumalo, akazange wabona ukuthi obani babengaphakathi. Base eya khona-ke kwaKhumalo wathola indodakazi yakhe uGugu iphethe ingane kaKelly uThingo, kwakunabanye omakhelwane abakhumbulayo uJulia Masia kanye noMaggie Piri.
The reason why I'm referring you to this paragraph is to show you that there are people who remained inside the premises before your arrival, immediately after the deceased was taken out to the hospital.
Imbangela-ke yokuthi ngikufundeleke yona le paragraph ukutshengisa ukuthi kunabantu abangena egcekeni lakwaKhumalo nje emuva kokuthi bamthatha umufi bemhambisa esibhedlela.
You hear that? Yes.
Uyakuzwa?
And also that Mr. Themba Khumalo is not the only person who was left at the scene when the deceased was taken to the hospital.
Nokuthi ke ubaba uThemba Khumalo akusiyena kuphela umuntu
How does that change the fact that he's the only person they found on the scene when they arrived? It doesn't follow at all. It doesn't change that at all. It simply talks to the sequence of how things happened. Mr. Themba is the last person to be given the key by this group that included Maggie Phiri, was keen on cleaning the scene and tampering with the scene of the crime. She knew what she was doing. What you guys need to do is to establish who gave her the instruction to tamper with the crime scene, period. But to go create an impression that this Mr. Mteto has arrived on the scene knowing that this was a crime scene and didn't safeguard it, for me, that's just a wild goose chase. Let us proceed.
Yes.
And that there are people who had access into the crime scene, even into the house, when they cleaned the house.
That may be true, but the police officer had nothing to do with it because they had not yet arrived on the scene, nor had they at that time identified the crime scene. Remember that. All of this happened more or less instantaneously. When the police were being called, these activities were taking place. So the police cannot be held accountable for activities that took place before they were called to the scene.
Do you hear that? And let's go again to paragraph 13, which says, my lord, the reason I went into the house is because I wanted to see what happened in the house. When we're in the house, I saw water on the floor and the passage near the toilet door. I was amazed to see the water on the floor. Do you see that?
It doesn't matter how amazed she was. Okay? This has nothing to do with the police leaving a crime scene. The police had not even yet arrived there for the first time. So get to the chase, make your point, let's hear it. Where do you get it from that the police went there knowing this is a crime scene and they left it unsafeguarded? Where do you get that from? Let's get to that.
Nokuthi inkathi sengiphakathi ke endlini ngabona amanzi ke phansi kwipassage eduze nomnyango wase toilet kwangimangaza ke ukuthi ngibone amanzi phansi mangangazi ke ukuthi kwakumuntu wayedutshuliwe khona lapha.
And yet when you arrived, you also left the crime scene unattended by the police.
Okay, that's nonsensical, guys. I hope you can see that. I hope you can see that for what it is. And yet when you arrive, you also left the crime scene. Was this place written crime scene? No, Mshololo, this is low even for you. Believe you me. You know what? As a matter of fact, you are laboring hard on this cross-examination to change my mind, my view, my perception about you as a lawyer, right? I've always esteemed you very highly. Maybe that is undue, but nevertheless, let's proceed. But you are laboring very hard. This is a misrepresentation of facts. I'm perplexed that the judge has not yet wrapped her around the ankles to ask a simple question. Everything you have said hitherto is correct, even in the version of what you call the witness. How does that then translate into the witness having left a crime scene?
Ngathi nifika nina nathi uma nihamba ke nahamba isini leyo nayishiya ke ingagadiwe. Okay.
Paragraph 15. Maggie Phiri started to pick up I've read this paragraph, my lord. Thank you. Maggie Piri started to pick up the empties from the floor. I asked her why she's tidying up before the police could arrive at the scene. Maggie...
Did you hear that? Why is she tidying up before the police could arrive on the scene? So this statement that she keeps on reading blows her case completely out of the water. How can she not see it? I don't understand it. I genuinely don't understand how can she not see it. The police hadn't arrived on the scene. Nobody, you see, law, when you read law, it specifically says in our constitution, nobody can be prosecuted for a crime they performed when it was not a crime at the time of them performing it. So if there was no law for that activity that you did, and then subsequently we enact a law, you can't be prosecuted and be found guilty retrospectively. She is finding the police guilty for activities that took place prior to their arrival. She wants them to be held accountable for failure to perform. Can you see that? That for me is extremely disingenuous. I don't want to make allegations against her because one, I like what you call the advocate. Two, I don't think she's doing this necessarily deliberately on her part. She's trying the best that she can. I don't think she's trying to be unethical. I don't think so. I think that she's thinking in her mind that she's really thinking of the box. But for you to think, I normally say, for you to think outside the box, you must be in the box. People who always seek to think outside the box are problematic because they are in the box and they are failing to see the box that they are in. Okay? She's boxed herself here into making an argument that to me is a non sequitur. One is a straw man argument, and all the facts that she's putting on the table are complete non sequiturs. Listen to this.
Responded that she doesn't want the police to see that the people who were inside the house were drinking. Do you hear that?
Nala nokuthi ke uMaggie Piri waseqala ke uqoqa ke ama-empty aye phansi ngambuza ke ukuthi kungani eklina ngaphambi kokuthi amaphoyisa afike. Waphendula ke uMaggie Piri wathi akafuni ukuthi amaphoyisa abone ukuthi abantu ababelapho endlini babephuza utshwala.
Do you hear that?
Okay. Yes.
Do you agree with me that this paragraph means that the crime scene was cleaned, the crime scene was tampered with before you arrived?
Uzovumelana ke uyavuma yini uma ngithi kwena ke nje uma ufunda la lokho engiqeda ukufunda manje lokho kuyasho ukuthi kwaqina.
What has that got to do with him leaving the supposed crime scene? It's a crime scene indeed. It was cleaned before they arrived. However, for it to be a crime scene, they need to identify it. You see, hindsight is a perfect science. Anybody can look smart when we're looking backwards. At the time, nobody, including the woman that authored that statement, why that you just read in court now, why didn't she tell the police this is a crime scene? For an example. And Kumalo could have been acting. The Kumalo's uncle could also have been party to it. He could have been acting, right? But here you are grilling a police officer, supposedly for leaving a crime scene which he hadn't identified. That's pathetic.
Futhi kwathemparishwa ke la ku crime scene ngaphambi kokuthi nifike nina. Yes, I hear you.
Paragraph 15 of the same statement. The police arrived at the scene and they went into the house. I can't remember who opened the house for them. They came out and I always saw the police van and I thought the police were always in the vicinity. Later, a contingent of police arrived at the crime scene. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, do you see that when you arrived as the police officers at the crime scene, the witnesses were already looking at you when you arrived, when the crime scene had already been tampered with? In other words, you came after the tampering.
Lana ke engikufuna nje ukuvezela kona ke ukuthi ke nanjengoba uyashoka lana ukuthi base kufika amaphoyisa amaningi ngatsanga.
I think she has an egg in her face right now. Do you see that her tone is changing? She has it because I think she's realized the error that she has made. She has an egg on her face right now. You see, the people are looking at you now that, and they are seeing that you have arrived after they had tampered with the scene. Did those people bring to the police's attention this was a crime scene? And this crime scene has already been tampered with. Please make sure that you safeguard it. No, not at all. She says she was seeing the police, but she didn't go there and say, hey, police, I was here earlier on. My name is Mang Mang. I was here earlier on. This is what has happened. This is where the activity took place. Instead, she allowed Khumalo to mislead the police by sending them to Makhumalo, all the way that side. Okay? Now, there's no evidence in that statement that once the police had gone to the hospital, somebody opened the door and they went inside the house, which is the argument Mshololo has been making all along. And her argument has been predicated on two things. The police knows that this was a crime scene. Two, they left it unsafeguarded. Therefore, they were irresponsible in their behavior. Right now, she can see that the statement she just read blows that case out of the water. The police were not there when the scene was tampered with. How are you going to hold them responsible for that?
Bona ngaso sonke isikhathi ukuthi la ngalesikhathi nifika umphakathi wabenibona futhi ke nifika kamuva sebelungisile ke noma sebetemperile lapha ya kwisini ngokwale line le ya statement. Okay?
And the police, they closed the gate with the tapes and instructed all the people to go out of the yard and only the family members must remain. See that?
Lana amaphoyisa ase evala ke igate ngawo amathepi base betshela wonke umuntu ukuthi aphumeke egcekeni kusala bomndeni kuphela.
Do you agree with that?
At this time, the police had identified the place as a crime scene from the information given them by Makhumalo on the way from the hospital back to the house. That's why then that's the first thing that they did. Chase everybody outside the yard, not from the inside the house, no, outside the yard. And even if there were people inside the house, the police cannot be blamed for that. There was no crime scene identified. And the people around there, including the one who wrote that statement Mshololo is reading, that person ought to be asked, why didn't you tell the police that this was a crime scene?
I hear you.
Yes, do you agree with that? That the crime scene was then cordoned off by those police officers. And other people were asked to move out of the premises and only the family members that were allowed to remain inside.
I agree, but there were no people inside.
There were no people inside. But the gist of my question is that did you see that by the time you cordoned off the crime scene, it had already been tampered with?
It was tampered with before they arrived there the first time. You have read a statement that proves that the crime scene was tampered before they arrived on the scene the first time. It was not tampered with when they went to the hospital, which is the impression you are trying to create. And even if it was tampered with when they went to the hospital, it proves nothing because it had not yet been identified to be a crime scene by the police. And for the police to identify it, it's pretty clear in the evidence in chief, and it's pretty clear. The woman that is writing this statement knows this place is a crime scene, but she withholds all of that information from the police. She literally needs to be charged for what you call defeating the ends of justice. Such people needs to be charged, but not the police to be grilled like this as though there's something that they did wrong. They did absolutely nothing wrong. It doesn't matter how much he agrees with you that the crime scene was tampered with before they cordoned it off. It was tampered with because the people that we are dealing with are dishonest and they were seeking to clean. This Megipiri needs to be tried. You get the point? And so on and so forth. But don't take that anger to police who are ill-equipped, who don't have the necessary resources, who get to be deployed with inadequate information at harm's way. For me, that's an irritation. Yes, indeed, there are corrupt police, but they are the men in blue and women in blue. They work under very difficult circumstances, we need to give credit to those who do their job to the best of their ability and not treat them as criminals, which is a supposition, or as inept, as delinquencies, as people who are delinquent who do not know what they are doing, which is what Mshololo was doing. Her approach, her whole approach here has been patronizing.
Senivala-ke noma seniqoda na office leyana ukuthi kwasekukhona okwenziwe kwisini leyana. Yes.
And then let's go. Is it correct that you also made the second statement?
Ingabe kuyiqiniso yini ukuthi sikhona nesesibili statement owasenza?
I'm sure, guys, you can see that Mshololo couldn't prove that this crime scene was tampered with during the time these guys went to the hospital. And she couldn't prove that this was a crime scene known to the police at the time they left it. Therefore, the police at no time can they be accused of having left a crime scene unattended. Can you see that? I hope you see that, because remember, in court you use logic. Her arguments hitherto have been illogical in this cross-examination. And I think she's beginning to see that. Look at her posture. She's literally resigning. Remember how she started? She started with a vigor and a zeal. Where is that zeal right now? Can you see that?
Dated 12 October 2018,
Sunday 12 October 2018.
SPA 98. It's an additional statement that you made from the first one that you made immediately after the incident.
Nesesibili lesowasenza.
Do you see that statement?
Yes, what?
Yebo.
Yes.
Can you look at the last page? Do you confirm that is your signature?
Page of 10.
I think under paragraph 17 there, you know it better than me. I know and understand the contents of this statement.
Yes, it is mine.
You see, it's your signature. And the date it was given to by you on this particular date.
Wasenza ngale date le bhaliwe.
Which is the 12th of October 2018. Mr. Mthetho, speak like a police officer now.
8/12 is October 2018.
Yeah.
Yes.
You used to taking statements at the church office, ne?
Angithi ujwayele ukuthatha i-statement the-church office
Or you don't take them?
noma uyithathe? I do.
Oh, okay. Then let's go together in this statement. Let's go to paragraph 7, Mr.
7.
Mthetho. Or Sergeant. You were a constable by then, am I correct?
Wawusabule ngaleso sikhathi leso angithi. Yes.
And then now what is your rank?
Manje a surgeon.
Oh, okay. So pardon me if I still refer to you as constable.
Police uma ngisathi constable.
Sergeant Mthetho, let's go to paragraph 7, line number 5. I understand, Mr. Mthetho, that the statement was read back to you and you understood it as a police officer. Am I correct?
Wasifundelwa wase uyasizwa-ke nanjengephoyisa. Yes.
And when you signed the statement, you confirmed the correctness and the truthfulness of this statement.
Uma usayinda-ke uvumelana-ke nokuthi kuyiqiniso-ke okubhaliwe kusona. Yes.
Okay. Paragraph 7, line number 5. My lord, maybe can I just read the whole paragraph of paragraph 7?
Yes.
Thank you. Paragraph 7 of your statement, Mr. Mthetho, it says, we went back to the house and we met a black male in the yard near the gate. We introduced ourselves and informed him that we are attending to a shooting incident happened in that house. The man identified himself to us as Themba Khumalo, the uncle to Kelly Khumalo. He informed us that he was requested by his sister Gladness Khumalo to guard the house as they were rushing to the hospital.
Lana-ke ifundeka ngale ndlela sasesibuyela khona-ke endlini sahlangana-ke nomuntu wesilisa umuntu omnyama egcekeni eduze kwegate sayichaza kuyena ukuthi siwobani naye-ke nokuthi size lapho-ke ngokuthi sizwileke noma sithole umbiko ukuthi-ke kwaba nokudubula okukhona lapho endlini wayichaza-ke yena nanjengoThemba Khumalo umalume kaKelly Khumalo wasesazisa noma esitshela ke ukuthi wacelwa udadewabo uGladness Khumalo ukuthi abheke umuzi nanjengoba bona besaphuthuma esibhedlela.
Do you understand that statement?
Uyasizwa le statement? Yes.
In other words, it means Themba Khumalo introduced to yourself as uncle of Kelly Khumalo.
Kusho ukuthi uma eyichaza yena kuwena washo ukuthi umalume kaKelly Khumalo. Yes.
And a brother to Miss Gladness Makhumalo. If I say Makhumalo, I'm referring to Gladness.
Nokuthi ke umfowabo kaGladness Khumalo uMakhumalo. Yes.
Yet, as a police officer, you decided to leave the crime scene with a person who was a relative to the suspects.
No, man. Thank you, Judge. Now I was beginning to be surprised by the judge's silence with this line of questioning. How are they supposed to know this was a crime scene? No, man, Mshololo. This for me is your worst performance. I'm sorry. This is your worst performance in this trial hitherto. Let's hear the judge out.
26th of October.
Can I just rephrase it?
Yes.
The person who was a relative to the suspects.
How did you know that? On the 26th of October.
Can I just rephrase it?
Yes. Nobody knew who
Mr.
the
Mthetho,
suspects.
is it correct?
Thank you. How was he supposed to know that this person is a relative to the suspect? Who knew who the suspects were? Who knew where the crime scene was? This is what I've been arguing all along, that Mshololo's argument here is a straw man and it doesn't follow logically at all. Thankful. Well, there are certain things I'm not supposed to say as a Christian, but thanks that the judge has intervened on this matter, because she's been out of order as far as I'm concerned right throughout. But let's hear if she will now try to be in order. Observe, by the way, the story that she was pushing right from the beginning, that they left a crime scene. She's still trying to push the same story. She has a huge egg on her face right now.
That at that time, you did not know who the suspect and who was not the suspect.
Ngabe kuyiqiniso yini ukuthi ngaleso sikhathi leso ke ngalelalanga nanile khona lapha naningazi ukuthi ubona obani abasola obani engasibona abasola? Yes.
And your duty there was to protect, was to safeguard the crime scene, regardless of having any knowledge of a relationship between the people who were inside the house, but to anyone who is accessing the crime scene.
But you had to firstly identify the crime scene. Why is this escaping your brain? Why is it escaping you? You had to identify the crime scene first.
Kodwa ke okwenu lapho bakuwukuthi nje nigade nokuthi nisafeguardeke umuzi loyana nokuthi lo muntu lowo uhlobeneke noma uwumndeni noma akasiwona umndeni ukuthi nje nina nigade nje isini ukuthi ungabi namuntu ongenayo khona lapha yana. Yes.
And that was, sorry, not that was, that was a duty on you as the police officer to make sure that the crime scene is not accessed by any other people.
Kwakukunina ke maphoyisa ukuthi nenze isiqiniseko sokuthi lapha yana akungeni nje abanye abantu. Yes.
And including Mr. Themba.
I think this policeman is now tired of Mshololo, because he's saying yebo to what? Because he had already indicated they hadn't identified the crime scene. So they are not agreeing. So what is he agreeing to? And I do have a problem with people who don't have a degrees of staying in power. That's what he's now demonstrating. He's a little bit tired, and therefore he's just going to agree to disagree. Well, he's not even agreeing to disagree. He's agreeing for progress' sake. You never must make that. That's an error.
It was within your powers as the SAPS, after seeing out inside that there are exhibits inside there, to say, give us the house keys we are now going to take over control of this house as police officers.
Nokuthi-ke nithi kuyena-ke emuva kokuthi seningeneleke endlini nabona-ke ukuthi kunani-ke ngaphakathi nithi kuyena-ke sinikeze ikhiya manje-ke sekuzoba yithina-ke manje abazo.
No, before he answers, they opened the house and they saw exhibits. Really? No, this is a joke. And the judge is quiet. Really? A hat now is an exhibit of a crime? A crash is an exhibit of a crime? Really? How do you know what exhibits of a crime looks like when you have not identified a crime scene? Interesting.
Ungena kwethu endlini nale ndoda yakhumalo umalume. Ayikho into ayisitshela ukuthi kwenzakele something lapha endlini.
When we entered the house together with the Kumalo gentleman, nothing informed us that something had happened in that house.
Yeah, but you had been reported what had happened. And there is a report that you received from the station, Mr. Mtetwa. I don't want us to dwell on that. You have received the complaint. By the time you left at the station, you knew very well when you entered there. And it was confirmed that there is a shooting incident that has taken place here.
Who confirmed that? The fact that the police officer has told you that they receive these reports and sometimes they are falsified was they are being dispatched to the scene was to verify the very claim, and they saw nothing that resembles a shooting. So how can you say that they knew? Knowledge based on what? How do you go and verify something you know? I mean, that doesn't make sense. They went there to verify the veracity of the claim that was made on the phone call. And when they got there, the Ngashas were not on the scene to say the shooting took place inside the house. Nobody was inside the house. When they went, remember that the police cannot go into anybody's house without a search warrant and search the house, unless of course there is a verification that indeed in this case there is a crime that has taken place. Now the fact that he has explained all of this in his evidence in chief. I'm surprised that the judge is just allowing this line of questioning.
Noma ngabe utholile umbiko kodwa nawe kumele mawufika la uyakhona ube nebelief yokuthi vele khona into eyenzakele la if kungekho umuntu okutshelayo ukuthi kwenzakalani.
Also, even if you had received a report, but
that's precisely the point I've been making all along. They did not know what has happened save the phone call. And when they got to the scene, nobody told them what has happened there and where did it happen, except when they got to Makumalo in the hospital. Hence, only after that was the scene identified as a crime scene and cordoned off. This is pretty simple, but it's almost 2 hours that right now I'm reacting to a video where supposedly somebody who spent years at law school seems to fail to understand how this does not become a crime scene because it has been called a crime scene on the phone. It becomes a crime scene because there is collaborating evidence on the scene that indeed the reported incident has taken place. What happens in all those instances where they get there and there's no such an incident? It was just a false call.
When you get to that particular scene, you also need to have that belief in the absence of anyone telling you as to what had happened.
Mr. Mtetwa, I put it to you that you were reckless and ignorant in not safeguarding the crime scene after you had received the report that there had been a shooting incident.
Naba reckless-ke ngendlela yokuthi-ke ningabheki-ke ninganakekeli noma nivikeleke i-crime scene leyana futhi ukuthi nje anizange ninaba reckless anizange ninake futhi ekuthini nibheke-ke noma ni-safeguard i-scene.
And
we submit that it's a matter that should be left for argument. The witnesses commented on that aspect several times.
But life also doesn't teach us all the answers. There are two policemen that come to investigate a shooting, as you correctly said, at 133, 155, Kutano Street. They find the uncle, let's put it like this, the brother to Mrs. Kumalo,
yes,
who is left with the trust that because you are a relative look after my house. That is a factual situation.
But
Now, wait. I want to tell Mr. Kumalo, I Pumala Benjamin. Life doesn't work like that. That's why he says he wanted to know what is happening. And Kumalo, being helpful, he says, you know what? I don't know the real facts. I'm guarding the house for my sister Gladness. They're at hospital. Go and find out from that. I mean, it's reasonable.
my lord, it is
Wow. Wow, this guy allows me to run on and on and on for almost 2 hours. And then all along he sees what I've been seeing. My goodness. I could have done a 15-minute video here. Gee, what? I had to literally attack every... And this is necessary because if I had paraphrased this video, the understanding would not be there for many to see. It is important when Mshololo makes these arguments for you to dwell with her with reasoning, to point out the folly in the argument, that it's a non sequitur, it's a straw man. And she does a lot of ad hominems as well, meaning attacking the witness personally, such as to say, think before you answer, you being a police officer for so long. Sure, she does a lot of things that to me, logically, are disrespectful to the individual who has an inherent right to dignity according to the Constitution of the Republic, paragraph 10 of the Constitution. And that dignity must be respected and protected, right? And when she drags these guys, nevertheless, let me not spend much time on that, but I'm pleasantly surprised to learn that the judge sees this thing the same way as I do. Wow, what a pleasant surprise to say that it's logical for the events as they have unfolded, and it's a reasonable explanation. To create an impression otherwise that they were reckless, that is to surmise evil about other people. You understand? And as I've already indicated to you guys, that I'm a Christian, and we are expressly taught in the scriptures, and I'm not going to preach to you, don't worry about it, but we are expressly taught in the scriptures not to surmise evil concerning any man. So we have to give people a benefit of the doubt. Sure, we can be easily victims, but the point of the matter is that there is no basis to attack a person the way Mshololo has attacked this guy. There's no foundation for all the arguments that she has made here. She simply perverted logic, her very own logic as a lawyer. But let's hear what the judge says to the end.
reasonable in the eyes of the court, but with me,
No, of human experience.
my lord, of human experience,
Yes.
but with me, my submission, my lord, is that the witness, as the police officers, after entering inside the house and after
And who opens up for them?
having received the report from Mr. Temba Kumalo, as the police officers, my lord, they ought to have taken control of the crime scene. As the police officer, they ought to have taken control of the crime scene
And chase away Temba Kumalo.
and instruct Temba Kumalo to wait outside in order to safeguard the tampering of the crime scene.
And at that time, they don't know what has happened in the
Now it appears that Temba Kumalo is an uncle to a
Yes.
person who is a suspect. in
It's
this
an
matter.
afterthought, you're right. After.
So that's why.
Apprising themselves of the situation. Now they know that actually, even Senzo Meyiwa is the person who was shot. After. But it's okay to foresee the future without having
Yeah.
the background knowledge.
Yeah,
But my
hindsight.
Okay, fine, you have made your point. I'm just saying.
point is that the police officers, it is their duty to safeguard the crime scene on their arrival at the crime scene.
And the police do not disagree. On their arrival at the crime scene, they must safeguard the crime scene. But for them to arrive at the crime scene, they must first identify the crime scene. So the judge is right, you've made your point, but it's an invalid point. And it's pretty clear, and I'm glad that the judge says things logically. I'm so glad, because for me it's pretty clear this is a witch hunt.
Yeah, fine.
Yes, that's the point I'm making.
Okay.
And now, do you see that the person who happened to be an uncle of one of the suspects is the one who was left with the house?
How could you have known before then? We only know, when was that docket, the second docket opened, Mr. Minister? That's it. It's general knowledge that the second docket is opened in January 2019. After how many years? After the first one? After 5 years. That's the point. So nobody knew that the so-called relatives, the sisters, the brothers, they are suspects. Nobody knew until 2019 July. That's fact. Not speculation.
And you
That's
can't.
fact, my lord, but my point is,
No, your point is invalid. You can't ignore the facts. Your point is invalid. You're on a wild goose chase. And okay, no, I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna say that.
had you done your job properly?
Okay.
Yes, my lord. Had you done your job properly as a police officer,
But they did their job properly. Who said they didn't do their job properly? Why were they supposed to get to a house that allegedly there was a shooting taking place, and when they find a male standing there who says nothing about the shooting that took place and simply points them that the people that were here have rushed to the hospital, I know nothing about any such. So why were they supposed to bamboozle that person and take the key? And they went inside the house for themselves. They were not, it's not like they were forbidden to go inside the house. They went inside the house. They did not find any evidence just by browsing through to look for the obvious things, and they couldn't see anything that was obvious to indicate that this is a crime scene. So hindsight is a perfect science, as I've said before. I say it again. This is not the best performance of Mshololo. This is a worst performance as far as I'm concerned. And I'm beginning to detect a level of arrogance in Mshololo of seeking to dictate, to tell how other people should do their jobs. You can't be an expert in all things.
do you? Mr. Mtetwa, do you know what else, what other instructions were given to Mr. Kumalo, who was given the keys and who was asked to guard the house?
Ngabe uyazi yini ukuthi yikuphi okunye abakutshelwa noma abaku-instructor uba uphumaphi?
How will the witness know that? Is he expected to speculate? He never testified about it.
If
Yes,
the,
Mr. Mshololo.
my lord, if the witness doesn't know, it doesn't. You need to answer, my lord.
Even if it's
If he
hearsay.
doesn't, even if he doesn't have the answer, he must say that I don't have any response.
Mr. Tetwa, are you able to respond?
Ikuphi okunye abakutshelwa uba kuphumalo njengoba wayeshiwe nesikhiya ukuthi akabheke umuzi? Ikuphi okunye abakutshelwa noma amanye ama-instructions awanikwa? I don't know.
You don't know. The second statement that was made by Ngobeni is statement 1A118. My lord, I'll read the whole statement, although I just want to
Which one
refer
is
this
that? The
witness.
Is that the one? Oh, Gugu.
It's Queen Ngobeni, yes, my lord. It's
The one who was lying on her bed
yes, my
and jumped out.
yes.
And then he goes there and says, I'm going to remove the alcohol so that the police mustn't find it.
Can I just read it, my lord, so that
Now, I've heard you read it. That's why I'm quoting it.
not the
You
one
can,
for
quote, you can quote what you're disputing, or you're saying it's unreasonable of him or her.
Okay. So, without reading everything.
Is it not the same statement you read?
No, it's not, my lord. The first one
Is
I
that
read.
Gugu is the daughter to the lady who was lying on bed at 8 o'clock?
Yes, my lord. The one I read is for Silver Happy Ngobeni.
Yes, yes. That's
I'm
the-
done. I'm done with that.
Yeah, Silva is the mother to Gugu.
Yes. Then now I'm reading for Queen Gugu Ngobeni.
Okay, fine.
Okay, thank you. Let's start. It's statement
I think I should do a different video for Queen Gogongobeni. Because 2 hours is a long time for people to watch a video. But this is the worst performance I've seen Mshololo giving. She is hell-bent on proving something that factually cannot be proven logically. You cannot prove that somebody is responsible to secure a crime scene they have not identified. That does not make sense. That is the same as sentencing somebody for a sin he had not committed, or he committed in ignorance before it even became a law, right? The law says you cannot retrospectively punish people for an offense that was not an offense at the time they actually did it. In this case, you have a scenario where, one, you need to identify the sin. Once you have identified the sin, you need to secure it. But the police are sent by an information that comes from the call center via the telephone, and they are not even told how many people are there, whether they are armed. You have to think about their life. They are literally thrown in harm's way. So they have to tread very carefully. When they get to the scene, they have to ask questions. They have to look if this guy is carrying a firearm. Is he himself suspicious? Could this be a trap where we may be ambushed? There's a lot of things that are going on here. So they acted with reasonable caution. A reasonable man test always has to be performed in instances of this nature. That is why I've been passionate to go through this and literally show you the errors Mshololo made in this cross-examination. For me, they are serious errors. She makes a lot of presumptions. She has a lot of evil surmising concerning other people as well. And that doesn't assist her in her cross-examination, because in my mind her premise is flawed, hence her argument becomes flawed oftentimes, as I've just showed you in this video.